Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Art of Manifesting Money, how to attract abundance, create consistent money flow, and achieve financial freedom. We're having another interview series today, and I'm so excited to have Andrus Morissette with us today. I want to hear more about her journey and how she's come to the place she is, and she's going to talk about how we shift internally to be successful externally. How are you today, Crystal?
I'm good. I'm great. How are you?
Good. I'm just excited about this interview because you have so much that you've accomplished. I don't even know where to start because you've done so many amazing things. But I do know that I want to hear about your new book and just, tell us about yourself.
Wow, that's a big, huge question.
Exactly. We need 2 hours, don't we, or a day?
Yeah, well, I think here's the interesting thing. I think when someone reads your bio or they read your resume, I think my bio can be a bit intimidating in the sense that there's just a lot of really neat and probably for some women huge accomplishments, but we don't put in our bio all the failures. So there's actually as many failures or more failures as there is accomplishments. So thank God
that.
Yeah, there really is. And I realize that now. Like I have this, I love to think of it as a big, huge, fabulous life. But even in amongst that big, huge fabulousness, I really do. Like every year there's still a project or something that I think, this is going to be huge, this is going to be, and it just doesn't click. And so my life in a nutshell, I would say I'm becoming a more healed, healthy woman. That's probably my number one thing that I like to think that's most important. I have a really amazing relationship with my daughters, who are now 19 and 21. I have an amazing relationship with my husband, and it wasn't always that way. We started off as amazingly intense lovebirds, and then family and children and all that stuff can sometimes just take you away from your love at times. So but I love that my marriage is better now than it's ever been, even when we were brand new little lovebirds. I self-published my very first book about, I'm going to guess now, 15 years ago. And then I got the 3 more books that I published with Hay House Publishing. And then my 4th, which is really my 5th book, The Emotional Edge, has just come out with Random House. So that's been another really neat accomplishment. I'm the founder of the International Coaching School, the SWAT Institute, which stands for Simply Woman, accredited trainer, and that was actually based off my first self-published book that it also got picked up with Hay House called Simply Woman. And I kind of laugh now because I always had that plan for SWAT, and it's interesting because when I first launched it, I don't think women realized just how big this was going to go and how determined I was, and it's happening now. We have SWAT coaches in over 30 countries and in all 7 continents. But I knew we were going to be the new Special Weapons and Tactical Unit. So I would have women way back in the minute say, why would you choose such a masculine-sounding name for a school that's only for women? And it just felt right for me, though. I thought, we're serious warriors. We're serious women. We're serious warriors, and we're going to get this job done. So, yeah, I have the SWAT Institute, and then lots of amazing things. I get to travel the world and giving talks, and I've done a lot of television, just a lot of really neat things. But like I say, honestly, mixed in through all of that has been a lot of trauma, a lot of tragedy, a lot of pain and suffering. And I think the greatest thing that the first thing I said was I'm becoming healthier, and I know I'm becoming emotionally so much healthier because the tragedies and the traumas and the drama is so much fewer and far between than it used to be when I was emotionally not as empowered. So as we change the way we show up in the world starts to really change the way it shows up for us. And so that's the thing I'm probably most proud of is the work that I'm doing around emotions and how we show up in the world so that our lives can become more fulfilling and we can be a greater expression of who we are.
And that's how I found you.
Fabulous. How'd you find me?
I'm in that.
How'd you find me?
My beginning part of my endeavors.
Yeah. Well, we all start somewhere, and the truth is you're not really. If you actually realized it, you might actually, your beginning might have actually been 20 years ago and you didn't know it was the beginning. Because now I look back and I'm like, when did my empowerment journey begin? And I always thought it was 1997 when I started my first journal and I turned that into my first book. And now I look back and I go, no, my empowerment journey started when I was about 4, because all of those experiences were all instrumental in making me who I am, creating desire and suffering and all of those things that create contrast that makes us decide, I want different, I want better, I want different. So all that stuff is really important part of the journey. And sometimes you think you're just starting it, but you're actually so deep in your healing process that now you're seeing it. But so, yeah, it's interesting when you realize it's all part of the journey, and probably this is just still a blink in really your whole story.
Right, and it's another notch in the belt, and I know that I would have never, if I wouldn't have, stepped out and, started, 7 years ago when I started my own business, that was a big part of me because I was doing that, all on my own, and I had many, many nights of crying.
I know. And
then you overcome it, and then you have your new level, and you have your new issue, and then you accomplish it, and so you just keep going. And I think that that's really what has drawn me, to that emotional side now. Now I need to dig in there and get healthy inside.
And the reason is because success, when I look at what is successful, that, yeah, you're crying because you're driven, because there's something you have to accomplish, and it's not happening, and it's very gripping, and it's stressful, and it's fulfilling at moments, but you're just driven. And then you reach a certain point that I did anyways, where I thought, by all outside images, I'm very successful. If someone were to look at me or look at my resume, I'm very successful. So being able to channel your pain and suffering and your anger and all those emotions and almost numb them and freeze them and then use them as building blocks to become successful is really smart and powerful. And it's what a lot of men do, and women weren't really ever taught that if you can become less emotional and just use all your anger and pain and suffering to climb, it will get you to a certain point. And it did for me, and it does for a lot of people who have come through a lot of pain and suffering, and they just sort of say, I'm going to show you. And that gets you to a certain place. And that all of a sudden now you go, okay, I've done that, but now I've got to unfreeze these feelings inside of me to have peace in my life. So now I'm successful. I'm never going to let that fall. But now I need to go in there, and I need to look at all those emotions that I didn't even allow myself to feel, deal with, face, so that I can actually go even higher in my success journey, which is sleeping really well at night, having incredible relationships, feeling a real sense. For me, that was for me. For me, it was like, okay, I've accomplished that, and that's great, but I really want to have the most beautiful, intimate relationship with my children, with my husband, with my friends, and do I even have really good friends?
Right.
Because did I really put the effort into, and did I just kind of allow people who clung to me to hang around? And are they really even in my best interest anymore? And what really serves me now? And how do I do that and not be selfish? How do I do that and be selfless and yet be selfish for myself? So that's been the journey for me. I'd say the last 5 years has really been now, what about me? And not in a way like, what about me? But what about me? What about me? What gives me joy now? What would heal my heart? What do I need to face and feel and deal with so that I can have a lighter inside, so I can be more at peace with the world? And that's been the work that I've done. So there's an element of really learning how to manage your emotions for great success, and then there's an element of allowing yourself to gently begin to peel back and feel the emotions and the stories and own it so that they don't continue to own you.
And I totally get that, and that's why I wanted to come out and talk. The summit's called The Art of Manifesting Money, but you know what? It starts on the inside, and we have to dig deep, and it's going to cause us to have an abundance of love, abundant of money, abundant of whatever it is your heart desires.
Well, money, right, because money is an exchange of energy, and without getting too woo-woo, this is really science. if we were to zoom down on anybody's hand, let's say for an example under a microscope, and we would see that the top layer, it is matter. It seems like matter. It feels like skin. Well, yeah, it is skin, and skin is made up of cells, and the cells are made up of water, and all of that stuff is true. But then if we were to continue with that microscope, zooming down deeper, we would say beyond the level of the skin, beyond the level of the organ, is now your body, your being. Everything is made up of these tiny little minuscule atoms, and those atoms are actually 99.999% empty. And we know now scientifically that your body, my body, we're all actually made up of these little tiny packets that are empty, but what's inside them is a little bundle of vibrating energy. And so we're an energy being, and we resonate at a certain frequency. And the way that you talk to yourself about yourself changes everything, because it literally allows your energy for you in your mind to feel like, I have high worth. When you talk to yourself about yourself, and you can make sense of those old wounds, and you can start to recontextualize them so they don't mean something so bad about you, and you can really start to deal with shame and guilt and blame and sorrow and all those things by almost seeing them as energy, then you would say, I will make more money, which is a currency of energy. It really is a currency. That's why we call money currency. And currency is really a vibrational frequency, if you were to think of it that way. And so money, like love, like these are all these ways that we exchange energy. We exchange energy. And when you know your own worth, and when you really have, and you can really talk to yourself in a way that you know your own worth, making money becomes the same as making love. It becomes the same as painting a picture. It becomes an expression of yourself, your greatest self, or your worst self. And so when people can get their heads around that, then it's not this, oh, I got to create. Well, really, truly, if you create a great product that has a high frequency, that resonates at a very high level of worth,
it comes.
It comes, and it might not come. Yeah, and it might not come on the time frame that you in our human mind.
Yeah, does anything
come? Right, but it's going to come, and if you stay the course and you stay resonating in that frequency of goodness and love and peace, and I'm kind to myself, and I'm not whipping myself anymore metaphorically. I'm not gripping. I'm not crying at night over it. I'm having a sense of what do I need to do for me to take care of me, to be good to me, to be kind to me, and then how do I make sure that I'm creating products and services, whatever it is that we want to give to the world, that are truly high resonating. There's no agenda. There's no manipulation. There's no, God, I got to get their thing so I can get their thing, and then it's really done on a win-win. I really want people to win with my products, and then I really want to win. And if we're all winning, that's the way to do it. And that's life. That's life in a nutshell.
And it makes it not so hard. It makes it fun.
Yes.
And it makes it where it just happens and it flows and it doesn't.
Yes, and in fairness, I mean, it doesn't just happen, and I think you don't mean to suggest that anyways.
Yeah.
I put in the hours. There's times where I'm writing
a
book. Right. And sometimes I'm writing a book, and I literally, because I'm like that crazy artist that and I've created a life now that I can do that. But back in the day, if I was writing a book and I still had to run my school and I still had clients booked and I couldn't unplug from the world. Thankfully, now I've created a world where I can make money when I'm sleeping because I have income that can come through. Like students are signing up. I wake up in the morning and say, wow, we had a $10,000 night last night in the middle of the night while I was sleeping. But all of that allows me now to be able to, if I want to write a book, I can unplug, and I might write straight from this morning until next Thursday and barely sleep, and it seems manic. And before, I wouldn't have allowed myself to have those kind of almost crazy moments because I couldn't. But now I can actually run on creative energy, and that's where someone might say, wow, so I am still putting in the hours, and I'm still working, but I'm really in this flow, this creative energy that it's almost like an athlete, or it's almost like an artist that it's flowing now through you. You are the conduit. You are the human being that's now putting this creative energy into words or into a painting or into a book or into whatever it is that your passion is. But when you reach that place where you're really in the flow, truly in the flow, it comes, and then when it turns off, you know, I got to get back to normal life. I've got to get back. Okay, let's put that book aside for a little bit now. Let's get back to, and then it's all this sort of dance between me and taking care of others, taking care of my family, taking care of me. But there isn't that gripping, desperate fear that I used to run on. I did too. I ran on that fear, and it served me. Like I say, it can serve you. It can get you to a certain level of success, but then it becomes your captor, because now you're afraid. You're still making decisions and choices on fear, that underlying fear. And so
it might not be there tomorrow, or
it might not be there
whatever.
tomorrow. And what if they don't like it? And what if they don't like me? And what if it fails? And what if it fails miserably? Well, sometimes it's going to fail miserably, and that still is a great lesson. Okay, what did I do right here? What did I do wrong? If I can really go in and look at why did this fail, could I relaunch this project? Should this book just be re-edited? Do I need to put it away and come back? Like, maybe we can do a second chance. There's always another chance. That's the other thing. I used to always think, I did an event with Dr. Phil years ago, and I never told this story for a long time because I cried for a month after it. I was supposed to give an hour-long talk, and then he was going to give a talk after me, and I had my part that I screwed up on certain things, but it was told just before I was about to walk on stage that Dr. Phil wanted to fly to Paris to meet Robin a little bit earlier, and you only have half an hour now. You only have half an hour to give your hour-long talk that you've planned and practiced.
Oh, of course.
But life is the flow, and I screwed up. Now, I screwed up because I didn't know how to build rapport, make sure they knew that I was intelligent and I had information to give, plus give the information, and then wrap it up with a good story in 30 minutes. I'd never done that. I'd always had hour-long talks, and so I screwed up. It wasn't really good. I would see people getting up in the middle of my talk and walking out, and I wanted to cry. I was like, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? People are walking out on me. And I went home, and I cried off and on for a month, and I thought my career was over until I realized, no, you just got to get back on the horse and
trial and error.
Trial and error to get your next gig, and it's okay. Just you keep moving, and but what do you need to learn from that? I need to learn that I don't arrive right at the time I'm supposed to speak. Give myself an hour, because had I been there earlier, I would have gotten on earlier and still given that hour-long speech. So the whole day shifted in time, and I didn't realize it. So I literally always used to get to things right at the final moment, running through the hallway to, it was just crazy. So I had to learn how to show up earlier for things.
Oh my God. You're so me.
Like I was always the one that was like, okay, the talk is at 1, and I'm like flying down the hallway at 12:55. Why did I do that to myself?
I have been this year trying to.
I've mastered it. I have to
I'm
tell
trying
you,
to master.
I'm early now. I had a meeting on Monday with a top-notch New York, L.A., Hollywood manager that, could potentially get. I've written another book since The Emotional Edge that we're talking about turning that into a movie or, just really exciting stuff. And, the old me might have I would have thought, okay, I have to be there. I'm going to meet her at 5:30, so it takes an hour door-to-door, so I got to leave at the latest 4:30. No, this time I left at 3. And I took my time, and I parked, and I got in, and I ordered a glass of wine, and I sat waiting, and then she walked. It was just lovely. It was like, I'm so relaxed. I'm in my element. Why did I live that way?
Right.
And that's how I was showing up. That was part of my emotional age.
Yes.
I was showing up in daughter energy for meetings, not in woman energy.
And I know exactly where you're coming from, because I've been doing that for the last 10 years, and I've put, so many hours in every day, and I get in a momentum and a flow for me, but really that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing, because I was so, overworked and overbusy and just trying to accomplish so much. And at the end of the day, I wasn't happy.
That's the truth. It's like if I'm running down that hallway at 12:55, it's not because I was laying in the sun all afternoon or morning. It's like because I overbooked myself on a million things, and I always thought I could get one more thing in and one more thing in and one more thing in. And then sometimes when you really needed to be on it, you missed it.
Yes.
Because you were too busy being busy, instead of really figuring out what's a priority, how do I show up really authentically, really empowered, really relaxed, really confident. And so these were things I had to learn along the way. How do I do that? And so I think there's all these little things. And so rather than saying I screwed up and I'm a loser, you say, okay, where did I screw up? How could I make better choices? What could I do to, learn from this and to make myself better at my craft?
Love it. And that's why I have been switching my entrepreneurial, busy, insurance firm executive, traveling, trying to meet and greet hundreds of people a day, and I deal with employers and all their employees all the time, and I want to teach people what I've learned over the years and what's worked and what hasn't, but then also get the inside worked on. So now I'm starting to realize that all the stuff that I was doing before wasn't what I needed to be doing.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If I can say it this way, in order for you to be here now, maybe you had to go through all that and learn all that because you have these incredible skills now and you really have built a business and you really do know. So, I don't actually know anyone that's really made it that hasn't worked their butt off.
Exactly.
So when I hear someone say that's not really successful and they go, it just all comes and it happens, I want to say, you're so clueless.
Oh, exactly. No,
you don't even know what you're talking about. Do you know that you're going to have to put in the time?
Yes.
You're going to have to put in some time here. But then when you do put in the time, then you really start to get clear on, well, if I put in this much time into this area, I see this manifest, and yet I was putting in this much time into this area and nothing happened. So years ago, for example, I had this, I just popped into my head. I created, before we had Facebook, I wanted to create a special private forum for women on my website. So I built one of those community forums.
Oh, yeah.
I would spend so many hours, but the thing is, I didn't have outreach connected to that forum. So I'm on this private little forum with my women who have already bought my courses. They're already in my world. And now I'm spending hours and hours and hours every day writing back to them and communicating with them. And I started seeing almost like the business wasn't growing, but I was giving incredible customer service. But at that point, I had to say to myself, Krista, it's different. When I'm on Facebook, let's say I were to spend 2 hours on Facebook, my Facebook reach now is 14 million people a day. So the same hours I was putting into that little private forum that I had 100 women on, I put those same hours into Facebook, and now I'm like, wow, so we're doing the same work in a different platform, and I'm reaching millions of people every day, and the business is growing exponentially because I'm putting in the same work, but I'm putting it in a smarter way.
Yes, exactly.
So I got rid of that old little private forum because I was like, no, we can build private groups on Facebook, we can build, but no, I can't put in those kind of hours to the same women all day long, like they're getting me almost like as their private coach.
Exactly, and you're not getting paid for it, or
I'm not getting paid for it.
Compensated, then it becomes a hobby, right?
Yeah, then it becomes like, what am I doing here? I'm becoming resentful that I'm helping these women, when the truth is I'm not resentful helping them all on Facebook because I actually have this sense of other people are watching this and learning from this dialogue.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so it's just a way of looking at things a little differently sometimes and really, figuring out, again, for me, back in the day, I wanted my books to be sold. At that time, it was all over North America. Now, thank God, it's just amazing when I think I'll get a copy of my book that's been translated into Romanian or Slovenian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, that's really neat for me. But even back then, I knew I kept getting invited to all these, local networking meetings. And I know all the women in my area. I shouldn't say I know. I don't know. I believe some of them thought I was snobby. But it was that in my mind, I thought, I'm not selling books to 50 women at this event over and over across Durham region, like where I live, Durham region, Ontario. And I would think to myself, it's not that there's only so many hours in the day, and I want to sell books to women all over the world.
Yes.
So I might fly into New York, and I spent way more money and way more time, but for my weekend, I actually did something that for me made sense for my career. I can't go out all those networking meetings. I can't.
Right.
because I'm not a locally owned business. Now, if I had a local health club, yes, that makes sense. I'm going to go to all the businesses and meet all the people in my town because I have a mortar and bricks business.
Yes.
It makes perfect sense to go to a networking meeting every week. But not the way my business. It's an online business. It didn't make sense. I would always try to explain that. I'd have girlfriends way back in the day that would go, you need to get out more, and you need to do this more. And now I want to go, you see, it worked. I followed what I knew was right for me, and it worked.
That's
so you got to really, you got to know what's right for you, and you got to get really clear on your time, because time is energy, and you got to be really thoughtful of where do I want to put that time, where do I want to put my energy.
I love it, and and that's exactly what the beauty of listening to someone that has done so many things, but yet has had the trial and error and has the little notch in the belt that has pushed you to the area that you are now, but you wouldn't have known a lot of it if you wouldn't have gone through.
Yeah, there's a lot that has to come from experience, and then there's a lot that you've got to learn from those who have done it. And one of the things I really tried to learn from the time I was young, and I've had a rough go, and we haven't even talked much about that, but, I had a really rough go. I was sexually abused. It was excessive. With my parents split up when I was 12, and at that time from 12 to 15. My mother sort of went off the deep end, God bless her, but she really did. And there were way too many men in our home, and I was sexually abused, and it was a really terrible time. And at 15, I moved out. It was just insane what I was living in. And by the time I was 17, I thought, I'm going to go and get a checkup. I've never had a checkup, and I discovered that I had an STD that had caused cervical dysplasia, and then it started to form into cervical cancer. And so I was really young. I spent 2 years taking the city bus by myself to the hospital. It started off with cryotherapy, and then that didn't work, so we had to go to radiation. And then, at 21, I had a really traumatic head injury that I fractured my skull, and it was just another trauma. And so I had a whole series of traumas, but that's where I really started understanding emotion. And that's why the book, The Emotional Edge, was so special, because through all those traumas, I kept reading books, and whether it was Tony Robbins, and he's not even that much older than me back in the day, or it was, Think and Grow Rich, I was still like really trying to learn from people who had made it.
You were feeding yourself.
I was like really, really educating myself, and I was like, I'm learning what works, and now I have these wounds in me. So I also knew one of the things that I learned at a young age was when something fails, when I feel really crappy inside, or when someone triggers me, so I'm coming up against something or someone and I'm in such resistance, I learned really young, it has nothing to do with that other person. It's all about me. So what is this bringing up for me emotionally? Okay, so I'm wounded here. I'm clearly wounded in this area emotionally, and I had to figure out how to heal that. So healing myself became my number one priority so that I could not have that level of fear and resistance all the time. So healing myself emotionally, and that's really why I created the book, The Emotional Edge, because I became fascinated in patterns. I'm fascinated by patterns. The brain is actually a belief machine. It's like a pattern machine, and the brain is always searching for patterns to create mental shortcuts so that you can stay safe and do it in the shortest, fastest amount of time. And so I started really studying people and saying, wow, look at their pattern. That there's a pattern in women that show up in the world that way, and there's a pattern in women that show up in the world that, and men. And so I started, and I created sort of all these mental shortcuts, and I was able to really quick be able to almost assess, and people might call it psychic. I don't think it is psychic, although it is intuitive, but my brain searched for patterns. So I would say that's what successful patterns are. Those are unsuccessful patterns. People in love that are really good. Wow, look at the pattern. And I call it, in The Emotional Edge, I created archetypes. And people are confused sometimes when I use the word archetype, and I kind of used to be confused by it. But an archetype is just sort of like a quick mental shortcut. Like if I were to say the word the seductress, that's an archetype. You get an image right in your mind. It's like, oh, that's a woman. She shows up like this. We call someone a cougar, or the bad boy, or the drama queen, or the diva, so there's archetypes. And I started noticing patterns. It's like, oh, that woman shows up like that archetype. That woman shows up like that archetype. And I could almost predict and because I've been doing coaching now for 15 years as well, I could almost predict when I get on the phone with someone and I listen to them for 5 or 10 minutes, I'd start saying things like, so I bet your marriage is like this, and your children treat you like this, and your money's like this, and they go, how do you know all that?
Oh my God, that's so me.
and they'd go, how do you know that? And I want to say, I'm a psychic, but really I wanted to say, because this is universal human patterns.
Right, and everybody has a form of intuition, and if you educate yourself, like you said, you can
predictable.
Pick it out.
It's very predictable then. So when I started to see that, I then decided, Krista, you got to blow the lid off your own denial and look at yourself honestly and figure out what's your archetype. How are you showing up in the world, and is it working for you? And what do you need to do to become an even greater, more empowered, more beautiful, fulfilling archetype, so that your persona and then what's under it, all the stuff that's driving that, is healthy. So that became my mission, and it's still my mission. But boy, I'm in emotionally, it's probably the strongest, emotional, happiest, most peaceful place I've ever been in my life. And that makes me so happy because it's reflected now the way of all my relationships. And I'm not saying I'm not going to have tough times again, but I can really navigate tough emotional relationships and tough times now in a way I didn't have the tools for it before. So I know that we can learn these things because it's all learned. I mean, everything that we're kind of going through are like these patterns and things we've learned from the time we were really, really, really little, like 2, 3, 4 years old, and we don't know it, but there are patterns that our brain made, beliefs were formed, and then we live those out. So we have to have the tools to know how to go back in there, really look at the beliefs, make sense of them in our adult mind now instead of just being driven by unconscious patterns because of our wounded little child self. Heal those things so that we can have new mental shortcuts.
You know, and I've got my feet wet a little bit reading Carolyn Myss, her archetypes, and a couple years ago I was reading some of her stuff, and and I started realizing what those archetypes were and trying to figure out what mine was. And then once I started reading your book, and that's just where I'm at right now, trying to figure out, my emotional edge and what I feel inside. And, but you're just such a breath of fresh air, and you just have so many insights. And I'm so excited that you were able to, be a part of the summit. And I wanted to ask, what are you going to be providing for our guests as a free gift?
Well, I wish we would have talked about that before, because I hope I don't know because my director of operations probably sent that gift to you. But is it our 21-day course?
Well, you know what? It's whatever y'all want to offer.
Well, let me tell you this.
Yeah.
We have so many amazing give-backs at the SWAT Institute, and it's www.swatinstitute.com. So let me tell you the first thing that I would love everyone that's listening for women. If you have a mother, a sister, a daughter, or for yourself, we offer, there's absolutely no upsell, there's no hidden fees. We offer free mentorship coaching. And the way we're able to do that is because our coaches have gone through this extensive training, and before they can graduate, they have to do 30 practice hours of coaching on real women, not your mom, not your sister. So we have all these women from around the world that sign up to be coached, and then the coaches get to have real women, and real women get to have really empowered coaches. So it's called our mentorship coaching program. So I would love and really take advantage of it, because you really can get these incredibly trained coaches that understand exactly the process I use, the empowerment process. So that's one free give back. The other thing is you're going to notice on the SWAT Institute website, under that, it says give backs. One of them is the mentorship coaching. Another one is a 21-day course that I put together that I used to sell for a couple $100. And it's incredible. It really is. It's 21 days every day. There's about a 15 to 30-minute MP3 from me, and I walk you through the whole empowerment process. So that's a great course. And there's a lot of really neat, there's meditations.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Right.
Those meditations are my favorite.
The meditations I've done, like really beautiful recorded meditations that are, I think, really special.
They are.
So there's a lot of really, and you know what? Don't be afraid. One of the things I would say to anybody that's in business, don't be afraid to give away really high quality stuff, because you want people to actually know what you're really able to do, and then they'll build a relationship with you. And then when it comes time to pay for a course or pay for something, people will say, well, if I got that for free,
oh my
wow,
God, what are we going to get?
What are we going to get when we're paying? And so I really do make sure that our products and services and courses are beyond fabulous. So we've never had a refund. We've never had, we've been in business a long time, and I shouldn't say we've never had a refund, but we've never had someone, you can go on Google and put my name in there, and there's one that pops up about 25 pages in, and it's not me. It's a different Crystal Andrus, and someone contacted me, and I was like, nope, not me. But there's not one complaint. There's not one on the entire internet about, and I've been doing this work for 15 years, so that's how you know if you really do create incredible products, you're going to be respected, and in time that's going to click, and people will know, hey, when I come to you, I get what I paid for.
I know. And I've already been on your websites, and I'm going to have the links on the summit pages, so everybody will automatically be able to just hit the link and be able to go to the SWAT.com and, get whatever one they choose. And I've already received them, and I love them.
Great. I'm so glad. So glad.
But thank you so much for being a part and joining us today. It's just been such a pleasure. And we'll continue to spread the word, and I will have everything up and running on the Summit webpage, and we'll send you a copy of everything as well.
Thank you. Awesome.
You're welcome.
It's been a joy.